Thank you for clicking on this video, we appreciate your support. Let us know in the comment section where you are watching from. To support us, please subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Today's story is the Wicked Nanny sold her lover's children for revenge. Once upon a time, in the city of Lagos, lived a very rich man named Richmore. He was a billionaire and the son of a multi-billionaire. His father was the head of the whole company, having built it from scratch with his wife. But a few years later, he lost his wife and decided to bring his son, Richmore, to run the company alongside him so that one day, he would take over his multi-billion business as the CEO. Richmore had a younger sister, Sarah. She was married to Femi, and they were happily married with 3 children. But Richmore was a playboy. All he was interested in was playing with beautiful women's hearts, spoiling them with gifts, having his way with them, and then dumping them. He never had any serious relationships, especially after his mother died. He was afraid to marry and love someone the way he saw his father love his mother, only to later lose that person. He watched how his dear father suffered when his mother died and wished never to lose anyone so dear, as his father did. This informed his decision to only play with beautiful women and never marry them. Sometimes, he patronized escort services to get women, especially when all his girlfriends started demanding commitment in the form of marriage. So, he chose to use an escort service to get girls he paid for, ones who would do as he wanted, without questions and without emotional entanglements. Richmore really lived a playboy life and never cared about the women he dated, except his dear father and his work. One day, his father called him and said, "Richmore, my son, I need you to settle down. All these women you bring in and out of the house without marrying any of them is not good for you." Richmore responded to his father, "Dad, I do not need a woman in my life." His father replied, "Remember, you are my only son, and your sister is married into another family. You are the only one to carry my name when I pass on. Don't you want to bless me with a grandchild or grandchildren? I have given your sister a lot of money to establish herself, but I need to make sure you are married to a responsible woman and have children before I die." Richmore responded, "Daddy, I will do it in my own time." But his father said, "You are now 38. When is your own time? Listen, you have 1 year to get a wife, consummate the marriage, and bear me a grandchild. If not, I will everything to your sister and her husband, and you will be left penniless." Richmore looked at his father in shock. His father repeated, 1 year. 1 year is all you have." The next day, Richmore sat quietly in his office, thinking aloud. Why would my father do this to me? Is it by force to marry? Look at what he went through when Mummy passed on. I don't want to feel that way ever. But this man means business. He wants to give my inheritance to my sister and her husband, Femi. And for God's sake, I don't like Femi's family, especially Abayomi. I am rich, and so is he, but he thinks he is better than me. No. No. I must do something. Abayomi was Femi's brother-in-law. Abayomi's girlfriend was Femi's sister, and Femi and Richmore did not like each other very much. Hence, there was this silent beef between them. They never showed it, but they could feel it. After thinking for a while, Richmore decided to visit Madame Grace, an escort service provider. Her job was to pair and hook up beautiful women ready to sell their bodies in exchange for good cash with very rich and influential men. Richmore greeted Madame Grace, who was smoking in her office, and said to her, "Ha, Madame Grace, I want a young woman who looks very clean, beautiful, and well-educated. I want to marry her based on a contract. She will fake date me, and we will fake love each other. After 3 months, I will propose to her, and she will marry me legally and get pregnant for me. But no feelings will be attached to it. After 2 years of marriage, she can divorce me after having 2 children for me, and my dad will have signed the company over to me. No feelings necessary." Then he asked her, "Can I get that?" Madame Grace smiled and said, "Oh yes, you can, but it will cost you 150 million naira. Richmore looked at her and said, "Done. When I see the girl and approve, I will send half of the money to you, and when she has conceived after marriage, I will send the balance to you." Madame Grace was so happy that she did not know if she would fly through the roof. She wanted to say 50 million naira, but decided to test him and said 150 million naira, and he agreed without question. When Richmore left, she quickly called Aliya into her office. Aliya was a good woman whom she used as her secretary, PA, and accountant. Aliya only knew Madame Grace as her only family, and Madame Grace told her that her parents had died along with her brother and that she had adopted her to save her. Because of this, Aliya was grateful to Madame Grace and served her in her house as a maid and in her office as a personal assistant and secretary. Grace never exposed Aliya to the life and business she did and never allowed her out of the house except for education. After Aliya graduated as an accountant from the university, she worked for Madame Grace on a very low salary as payment for all she had done for her as an orphan. Hence, Aliya served Madame Grace without question, hoping one day to pay the debt and be free to live her life. When Aliya finally came to Madame Grace's office, she told her that she was getting married and explained the plan. Aliya was so sad and felt she was being sold off, realizing she would never get her freedom soon. Madame Grace told her that she would pay her 20 million naira. Upon hearing 20 million naira, Aliya decided it was worth the money, and if she did it for 2 years at most, she would be free and could take care of her children even if the father did not want any emotional entanglements. She thought she would invest in a business, and life would take off from there. Little did she know that the deal was 150 million naira and that Madame Grace had secretly hidden 130 million naira away from her. Madame Grace smiled wickedly as she carried her cloth to cover the big birthmark on her left shoulder, looking into the past and regretting her past actions. The next day, Madame Grace requested that Richmore come and inspect Aliya, his soon-to-be bride. When Richmore saw Aliya, something turned in his heart, and Aliya, who was prepared for the worst, just looked at him. Richmore immediately killed the feeling in his heart, telling himself that she was simply a high-class call girl and nothing more. He nodded in approval and transferred 75 million naira to Madame Grace's account and signed the contract. In her mind, she had hit the jackpot, as she could not believe what she saw in her account. She instructed Aliya to follow Richmore, and they parted ways. That day was the best day for Madame Grace, and she was too happy for the rest of the day. At Richmore's house, he called the maid to take Aliya to one of the rooms, and the next day, he took her shopping and spoiled her with gifts, clothes, shoes, bags, and jewelry to bring her up to standard. Already, Aliya was naturally a graceful lady with style. She just naturally fit into the clothes, bags, and shoes with such a modest demeanor, and this pleased Richmore. When they got talking, he found out she was very intelligent and smart, and he wondered why a smart girl like her would be involved with an escort service for men. Then he hardened his heart and told himself, this is just business, killing whatever feelings started to stir up. 1 month had already passed, and the charade had begun. Richmore and Aliya would go out in public, exchange kisses, hug lovingly, and play to the public eye. Aliya would even prepare meals for Richmore and his father and take care of the house. By this time, they were married. Richmore did not wait too long, and he married her, to his father's surprise. His father was just watching his son, Richmore, to see what magic he was playing on him. But as time passed, Richmore's father completely fell in love with Aliya. She was homely, took care of both of them, cooked, and genuinely cared for them while still playing the charade. Back in Richmore's room was a connecting door to Aliya's room, so anytime his father wanted to come in, he would quickly go into Aliya's room as if they were intimate. Richmore's father was so happy for his son. Meanwhile, Aliya was beginning to soften toward Richmore. She saw so many good and kind sides of him and wondered why he wanted a contract wife when he could get any woman for free. Bianca, one of Richmore's exes, got wind that Richmore was married to a common girl. She, a rich and classy woman, could not believe he had turned her down for a less classy woman. This made Bianca so angry that she wanted revenge at all costs. She started to investigate who Aliya was and where she came from. Eventually, her quest led her to Madame Grace's place. She pretended to be Madame Grace's friend for a while until she got misleading information about Aliya. She assumed that since Madame Grace ran a high-end escort service, Aliya was one of them. With that, she was happy to use the information as bargaining power against Aliya. Her intent was to threaten Richmore into marrying her, or else she would report him to his father. Meanwhile, at a gathering of rich men and women, Richmore and his arranged wife, Aliya, were in attendance. Also present was Abayomi. Abayomi spotted Aliya and took an instant liking to her, but something about her reminded him of someone he knew a very long time ago. So he approached her and greeted her warmly. Aliya responded, and he asked her about her family background. She responded that she had no one. She mentioned that she had an aunt who adopted and raised her, and that was all she knew of a family. The party continued, and eventually, everyone went to their respective homes. At Abayomi's place, he kept thinking about Aliya and wondered, could this be my little sister, Halima? He remembered the night their housemaid kidnapped them and sold him off to someone, never seeing his little sister again. She was only 3 years old at the time. One detail stood out in his memory: the maid had a large birthmark on her left shoulder. The experience haunted him. At just 8 years old, he was powerless to stop it. From that moment, he vowed that when he grew up, he would search for his father and sister. Years later, Abayomi had managed to find his father through an investigator. Before his father passed away, he confessed to having an affair with the nanny. When he ended the relationship, she retaliated by kidnapping Abayomi and his sister and disappearing. Despite his best efforts, he never found them. On his deathbed, he begged for Abayomi's forgiveness, which Abayomi gave wholeheartedly. However, he promised himself that he would continue searching for his sister. As he observed Aliya, he noticed something familiar. The way she smiled was exactly like his sister's. This only fueled his curiosity further. Now a powerful and wealthy man, Abayomi had vast resources at his disposal. With his father's estate willed entirely to him, he had the means to search extensively. He hired an investigator to look into Aliya's background. The report confirmed his suspicions: Aliya was indeed his sister. Overjoyed, Abayomi was eager to confirm the truth. The investigator had discreetly bribed a salon attendant who regularly attended to Aliya, obtaining strands of her hair for a DNA test. The results were an exact match. Now, Abayomi's attention shifted to her connection with Richmore. Determined to understand the full story, he instructed his investigator to follow Aliya closely. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing at Richmore's office. Bianca stormed in, threatening to expose the truth unless he divorced Aliya and married her. Richmore, now deeply in love with Aliya, tried to maintain his composure. He recalled the night they had consummated their supposed pretend marriage, a night that had shocked him. He had discovered that Aliya was a virgin, something he never expected. Curious, he had questioned her about her past. Aliya had explained that she only worked for Madame Grace because the woman had adopted her and saved her from an orphanage. The marriage was merely a transaction to buy her freedom after 2 years. Richmore's heart sank. Aliya was unlike any woman he had ever met: kind, loving, intelligent, and humble. Most importantly, she wasn't a call girl. The revelation only deepened his feelings for her. Furious at Bianca's ultimatum, he told her to go to hell. Bianca, seething with rage, stormed out, vowing to return with greater trouble. She headed straight to a bar, venting her frustration to her friends. In her fury, she blurted out damning accusations about Aliya, branding her as a high-class escort posing as a devoted wife to Richmore. As she spoke, she unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. Abayomi overheard the conversation and quickly introduced himself to her, faking interest in her to get information about Madame Grace and her location. He dated Bianca for a month, pretending to be in love with her and spoiling her silly with money and gifts just to get information out of her. Eventually, she spilled it all and revealed Madame Grace's location. Abayomi went there, pretending to seek the services of a call girl, and the moment he stepped into Madame Grace's office, he instantly recognized her as the maid who had kidnapped them many years ago. However, Madame Grace had no clue who he was. He demanded that Madame Grace attend to him personally and was willing to pay 3 times her price. Greedy Madame Grace agreed and took him into her room. As she removed her top, he saw what he needed to confirm, the large birthmark on her left shoulder. That was all he wanted. He faked having a stomach ache and left without using her services. Abayomi was furious beyond measure. He planned how to deal with her and get her arrested with solid evidence. Already, he was well known, respected, and feared in town. The people Madame Grace had sold Abayomi to were not very nice, and they had raised him in a tough environment. However, he eventually fought for his freedom and got them arrested after they committed a serious crime. With his money, he could buy their freedom if they were willing to get Madame Grace to confess what she had done in the past. They agreed. After 3 weeks, they obtained a video recording of Madame Grace confessing to her crime. With that, Abayomi kept the evidence to himself. When he got home, he overheard Bianca telling someone on the phone how she would deal with Aliya. He walked up to her, warned her, and then broke off their relationship. Bianca was shocked and wondered about the connection between Aliya and Abayomi. She concluded that Abayomi must be one of Aliya's clients from her escort services. Furious, Bianca left but vowed to destroy Aliya and Richmore's marriage. At Richmore's residence, Aliya was pregnant with their first child, and Richmore was overjoyed. This time, he told Aliya that he loved her and asked if she would like to start fresh with a real marriage instead of a pretend one. Aliya confessed that she had fallen in love with him a long time ago. He kissed her in joy, and their lives continued. Weeks later, Aliya gave birth to twins, and Richmore was overjoyed. By then, Abayomi had already met Richmore and explained the whole situation, the kidnapping, how Aliya was his little sister Halima, what Madame Grace had done, and Bianca's schemes. He gave Richmore a picture to show Aliya. When Richmore showed her the picture, Aliya recognized herself as a child, and memories started flooding back. She remembered being taken away by a woman along with her big brother. That night, her brother was taken away by 2 men, and she cried. It was then she realized that Madame Grace was the maid who had kidnapped them. She was furious, but her husband calmed her down. At the naming ceremony of their babies, Madame Grace arrived to celebrate and collect her balance of 75 million naira. Bianca came to expose Aliya's past, hoping to destroy her and Richmore's happiness by revealing everything to his father. Meanwhile, Abayomi arrived armed with the police to arrest Madame Grace with solid evidence. In a dramatic turn of events, Abayomi revealed everything to Aliya, including the DNA test results confirming that Aliya was indeed his long-lost sister, stolen by Madame Grace years ago. Bianca, upon learning the truth, realizes the depth of her mistake in seeking revenge. Consumed by guilt, she decides to right her wrongs and teams up with Abayomi to expose Madame Grace's crimes. With Bianca and Abayomi's help, Aliya finally confronts Madame Grace, who is arrested for kidnapping and human trafficking. Justice is served, and the victims she had wronged over the years finally find closure. Richmore, devastated by the revelation but also filled with admiration for Aliya's strength and resilience, vows to stand by her side no matter what. In a heartfelt moment, he apologizes to Aliya for his initial intentions, confessing that he never expected to fall so deeply in love with her. He professes his love, declaring that she is the only woman he wants to spend the rest of his life with. Moved by his sincerity, Aliya embraces Richmore, finally united in true love. Together, they embark on a new journey, leaving behind the shadows of their past and embracing a future filled with love, trust, and genuine happiness. As time passes, Aliya and Richmore build a home filled with warmth and laughter, raising their beautiful twins with love. Abayomi, no longer burdened by his painful past, finds peace in reuniting with his sister and moves forward, dedicating his life to helping others who have suffered similar fates. Even Bianca, humbled by her mistakes, starts anew, using her experiences to uplift other women caught in cycles of anger and revenge. With justice served and love prevailing, Aliya and Richmore prove that even the darkest past can lead to a bright and beautiful future. If you enjoyed our story, please subscribe to our channel to show you love and support. See you in our next story.